Okay, so basically, folks, we have two slides to go over that are examples, and the rest is just work. Okay, so we just basically just have these two slides to go over. I really need you guys to pay attention to these two slides, okay? Because if you don't understand if you don't understand these two slides, the rest of class is going to be very, very difficult for you. Okay, and these two slides are not hard to understand. Okay, at least I don't think so, especially in the way I think that I explain it. All right, so let's say that you let's say that you wanted to conduct a study, okay, on Patrick Henry students, okay? At Patrick Henry, okay, at Patrick Henry, there is 2,500 roughly students in the whole school, okay? That's a lot of students, okay? That's a lot of students. So just keeping that in mind, okay, there's three main studies you can do, okay? You can do an observational study, okay? An observational study is just, let's say you want to, a running joke with some teachers I've talked to is like, we're wondering if student athletes, okay, students who are athletes, like football players, basketball players, yada, 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 soccer players, do they seem to be more talkative in class, okay, because they have more energy? I've talked about that with a couple teachers. So an observational study would be something like, I observe my talkative students in class and see if they are student athletes. Okay, so like let's say we were back at Henry and there's 30 kids in this class, and I say, hey, to myself, I'm gonna make a note to myself, hey, I notice I'm gonna start looking around and seeing if the people who talk the most are athletes. Okay, and then if I see that maybe, oh yeah, 80% of the people who are talkative are athletes, then maybe I can say that if they are an athlete, they are more likely to be talkative in class. Okay? And the reason I said maybe super suspiciously is because it is suspicious. Okay? Observational, it is suspicious in that it's not that reliable. Okay? It's not that reliable to just observe talkative students and then ask myself if they are athletes. Okay? Because there are more than one, they could be talkative for many reasons. Okay? They could be talkative for many reasons. They could be talkative for reasons of maybe those same students are just maybe not 80-90% of them drink coffee in the morning. Okay, I know when I drink coffee in the morning or coffee any day, I can't stop talking, or it's really hard for me to stop talking. Okay? So that's why observational studies are not that reliable. Okay, they're the least reliable. Okay, they can be all right. Okay, they can be all right, but in terms of all these different studies you can do, okay, they're probably the least reliable. Okay, because there are other factors that can lead to students talking. This an example. Okay, drinking coffee or tea in the morning. Okay, also, okay, observational studies observational studies, if you want to make them more reliable, you should do it with more than one class. Maybe we should observe if we can, if it's possible, observe all the classes at Henry. And if you observe out of 2,500 students versus 30 students that student athletes are more talkative, then maybe that's probably more reliable. Okay, it's more reliable to say that students who are talkative maybe are more likely to be student athletes. Okay, so that's observational study. Okay, now let's take a controlled experiment. Okay, this is probably the most reliable out of all the studies. Okay, um, let's say that you're trying to figure out if Tylenol can help headaches. Okay, so let's say you divide all Henry students into two groups. Let's say not all, let's change it to half. Okay, so 2,500 divided by 2 is 1,250 students. Okay, into two groups. Okay, and that's 625 and 625 now. Okay, so let's change it to that. Okay, so let's say you take half of Henry's population, which is 1,250, and make it into two groups, 625, 625. Okay, now one group receives Tylenol, the other group receives a sugar pill. Okay, so it's just a fake pill basically. And over time, you see whether or not the Tylenol helped the students with headaches. Okay, and you compare it to the group that only received a fake sugar pill. Okay, I put fake in quotes there. Okay, this is probably the most reliable. Okay, as long as you have a large, okay, as long as you have a large sample of people. Okay, now you have 1,250 people. That's pretty reliable. If we change this to 50 and made it just 25 and 25, that's not too reliable, I would say. Just make sure that you are doing this experiment with a lot of people, and controlled experiments are probably the most reliable. Okay. Now, survey. Survey, I would say it's in the middle in terms of reliability, and I wouldn't even say that. Surveys can be reliable, okay, as long as you ask people in a random manner. Okay, so let me explain that. Okay, so let's say that you're trying to figure out what Henry student's favorite color is. Okay, what the favorite color at Henry is. All right, now here's an example where a survey is not reliable. Let's say you were to conduct a survey with students wearing mostly black clothes, okay, or wearing mostly red clothes. That's not a randomized survey because you're surveying people who are wearing a specific color clothing. So that's not reliable because those people are probably going to say, in this case, they're probably going to say, oh, well, black is my favorite color. Okay, if I change this to green, okay, or red, then they might say red is my favorite color. So you got to ask people when it comes to survey, okay, you want to try to do it, you want to ask random people, okay? You want a randomized sample. You want a sample of people that you want to ask. So, long story short, let me sum it up, okay? When it comes to all these studies, okay, every single one of them, what you want is a large sample, okay, for all these studies. You want a large, all studies, let me see this. Yeah, all studies become more reliable when there's a large sample. Large sample just means a large number of people you're asking or observing, or a large number of people you're doing the study on. Let's just say that. Okay. So again, sample is the number of people you're doing the study on. Large sample, and let me make it even easier. Large, randomize. Okay, make it simple like that. And sample, let me just say this, sample is the number of people in your study. Okay, just so that we're clear. Okay, so for all studies, All studies become more and more reliable when there is a large and randomized sample. Okay, so larger the sample, the more reliable. That makes sense. The more people you survey, okay, the more reliable your survey becomes. Okay, if you just survey 2 people out of Henry and their favorite color is black, well, that doesn't really tell you much. Okay, but the more you sample, the closer to 2,500 students you sample, the more reliable your survey becomes. Okay, and randomize, okay, is also important. Okay, randomize is also important because you want to ask people wearing. You want to ask. Your study becomes more reliable if you ask people. What their favorite color is, no matter what they're wearing: red, green, blue, black, pink, purple. Okay. All right. All right. Next slide. Any questions so far, folks? So there's basically 3 types of studies. All types of studies become more reliable when there is large and randomized samples. Okay. I think, by the way, most of you guys are pretty familiar with an experiment because of your science class, and a survey because I'm sure that you guys have heard that word before and probably know what it means. Okay. Observational study is probably the only new one. Okay. But it makes pretty easy sense because you're just observing, okay, a certain group of people, a certain number of people, a certain sample of people. Okay. All right. All right. Let's go on to the last slide here for notes. Okay. This one should be easier. Okay. So again, there in Patrick Henry, all right, there are 2,500 students. And let's say you're trying to do a survey. Let's pick a survey from these study methods. Okay, let's pick a survey. Let's say, again, you're asking them for their favorite color. Okay, there's 2,500 students. Now, folks, let's just keep it real. Who has the time to be asking 2,500 students this question? That's a lot of people to ask. Okay, so that's why we are going to pick a sample. Okay, we're going to pick a sample. Patrick Henry, a sample from the Patrick Henry population. Okay, so I'm going to call this the population. It's 2,500 students. Okay, let's actually put that in red. Okay, let me make that in red. Boom, make it red. Copy, paste, and delete that. Perfect. Okay, so your Patrick Henry population is 2,500 students. Okay, and our sample is the number of people in the study, and it's probably going to be less than 2,500 students. Okay, because who has the time to be asking 2,500 students that? I know I don't. Okay, so we're going to try to pick. Okay, we're going to try to pick a sample that is, okay, large and randomized. Try to pick a sample that is large and randomized. Okay, because the larger and more randomized it is, the more reliable. The sample more reliable. Okay, so again, okay, the Henry population is 2,500 students. The sample we're going to pick is probably less than 2,500 students because who has the time to ask 2,500 students? And we want to try to pick a sample that's large and randomized. Okay, so even though it's less than 2,500 students, our sample, we probably want to pick. We probably don't want to pick something like 5 students. Probably not even 10. We probably want to shoot for maybe like 200. Okay, 500 even better. Okay, and if you're if you're working with someone else on this survey, okay, like a friend, let's say you got a group of 3 people working on the survey. Okay, maybe you can ask even 1,000 people because you got more people power to ask. Okay, now, all right, let's cut to the chase here. All right, so there's 4 types of samples. Okay, you can use. Let's say that you ask, okay, the first 10 people to arrive at Henry. Okay, that's a convenient sample. It's just convenient. You're just gonna wait. You're just gonna ask for the first 10 people, okay, to get to Henry. Okay, let's just make it more realistic. A better number, 100 people to arrive at Henry. Okay. A self-selected sample is inviting Henry students to volunteer for a survey. Okay. All right. So people have to. The key word is volunteer for a survey. Volunteer. All right. These two are the best samples to have. Okay, these are the more reliable ones, systematic and random sample. Okay, so a systematic sample, it's not that hard to understand. Let's say you just arrange all Henry students by last name, okay, in alpha order. So A to Z by last name, and you pick every fifth student. Okay, that's pretty randomized. Okay, it's not the most randomized because there's some order to it. Okay, alphabetical order, but it's kind of randomized. Okay, because you're picking every fifth student. Okay, all right. And in this case, because you're picking every fifth student out of 2,500, 2,500 divided by 5 lands you 500 students that you're surveying. That's pretty good. Systematic and random samples tend to be more reliable, and I wrote that down here for you. Okay. Now, in a random sample, all members of the population are equally likely to be chosen. Random sample, this is probably the gold standard here. Okay, this is the best here. Okay, have Henry students roll a die, and whoever rolls a 2 participates in the survey. This is probably the most reliable, the most legit. Okay, a random sample. Okay, so systematic and random sample are probably the best. Okay, because they have are the most reliable because they are more randomized than convenience and self-selected example. Okay. Let me actually, I don't need this anymore, so let me move this bullet point up to second. Okay. All right. Now, let me just, a couple things before we wrap this up. Okay. A convenience sample. Okay. Now, one reason this may not be, this is where you got to put your thinking hat on. Okay, because some questions might ask you why is this not that reliable? Okay, and you probably shouldn't just say, oh, because Mr. Chen told me that systematic and random samples are more reliable. Okay, you should explain that. Now, here's a reasoning, and this is where your answer can be different than another person's, and I'm going to be flexible when it comes to grading. Here's a reason why asking the first 100 people to arrive at Henry may not be the best. Okay, when it comes to convenience sample. Okay, because maybe the logic is that if you are the first 100 people to arrive at Henry, okay, that means maybe you're not in a rush to get to Henry because you have planned your morning out the night before. You plan when to wake up, when to get dressed, yada yada yada. Okay, you're a better planner, so to speak. Okay, that's why you arrive earlier. Okay, you're the first people to arrive. And because you're better, maybe because you have more time in the morning because you plan better. You have more time to pick out a wardrobe, and you have more time to be more quote unquote colorful. Okay, and so maybe if asking the first 100 people to what their favorite color is going to skew the results. It's going to make the results less reliable because these people are going to dress in more colorful clothing. Okay, because they planned better the night before and they had more time to choose their wardrobe. Okay, and so they're going to more likely to say red, green, blues rather than the people that arrived later who are just like, dude, I got to get to school. I'm gonna throw on whatever. Okay, so I'm just gonna put on like this whatever black shirt I have. Okay, now you could say, well, Mr. Chen, your logic's totally false. because I got clothes of all colors, and when I'm in a rush, I'm still picking a color because my whole wardrobe is colorful. I get you, okay? But I'm just giving you this reasoning as a possible reasoning that you might have, okay? Um, like I said, I want you to be prepared that these answers might be more flexible, okay? Which is a good thing. That means that you're more likely to earn credit on these for an answer that's not mine, okay? Because usually you need to get exactly the answer or really close to my answer to get the right answer, okay? So the whole point of me explaining that is that, yeah, even though my reasoning might be incorrect, you may think, okay, your reasoning, whatever your reason might be, even though it's different than mine, may also be correct, okay? Um, because the answers are more flexible, okay? So folks, I know I did a lot of talking, okay? Hopefully this stuff makes sense to you. The first slide has to do with the different types of studies you can do. There's 3 types of studies. And the second slide has to do with not doing a study on 2,500 students because that's too much. Doing it on a sample of 2,500 students, which is some number that's less than 2,500 students, because who has time for 2,500 students to do a study on? And the 4 types of samples we can take, and the last 2, systematic random sample being the most reliable, and the first 2 being less reliable than systematic and random sample. Okay, so folks, that pretty much wraps up today's lesson. Let me go ahead and stop this video so we can get to doing some classwork here. Okay, whoops.